Hi everyone, and welcome back to Friendly Tech Chats. Today we are continuing our conversation about site reliability engineering.
Last time we talked about what SRE is in principle, what is the difference with DevOps, system operations, and now let's dive into the everyday challenges, approaches, what Bart employs in his current position and role.
Yeah, so we built a centralized SRE team where we've currently just 4 engineers, but we're scaling up. We're supporting about 700 developers and trying to bring them all to adopt these SRE practices into their engineering practices to make that their DevOps way of working. And what we've done is we've defined a bit of an SRE maturity model that we're trying to gauge everyone on how far they are in maintaining this active data-driven balance between innovation and reliability that site reliability engineering can give you. Practically, that means that an engineering team determines and writes down like what are the most important user journeys that for their applications, and then determines the right service level indicators for those user journeys. A critical aspect is that you make a down select,
Down
because
select?
you determine all the user journeys for your application, but not all user journeys are equally relevant. All user journeys bring value, but in the total amount of value that an application brings, only some of them have the lion's share. So you do want to be aware of performance of all the user journeys, but you don't want to make tactical decisions based on all the numbers, because then you're going to be overloaded with numbers in your tactical decision making.
And how many user journeys is usually a team has?
It depends on how complex the application is. It depends on how many applications a team has. On average, we see like that there's 10 to 15 different user journeys.
15?
Yeah. If
Okay.
you really go to like, because changing the configuration of an application is also a user journey. And so if you have all those different things, but those are usually in the less relevant user journeys. So what you then can do is that you take your most critical user journeys, usually like serving some relevant data to a customer, or like your main entity to the customer here, or updating your main entity in some critical way. And you have direct error budgets for those, and then maybe you have an aggregated error budget over all the rest of your user journeys. So that's the big difference. You have SLIs for everything, but you have error budgets only for some specificness, so that they scale with the amount of relevance that those user journeys have for the total amount of value that you deliver.
And these user journeys, user here can be any stakeholder. So it can be end consumer that is using the bol.com site, or it can be internal functional administrators that are changing configuration, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Or it can be another service. It's customer versus consumer, basically. Eventually everything ends up with the customer, but for a specific team, which is the current level that we're mostly rolling out, eventually you want to bring all these SLIs also back to SLIs that go over the entire value chain, but we don't have that ready yet. So currently we're really focused on enabling teams to do this.
You also mentioned at some point that SRE, not every team needs SRE. It's at certain point you need at scale and complexity. Is it correct?
Right. Yeah.
How does it work with the maturity level measuring with the determining of those journeys? If you have a team, at which point you start to take it into the SRE journey?
That's a really interesting question, because I've only considered that that angle for like at a startup, right, where you don't really want to be focusing on this yet, but I've always been thinking, like, at Ball.com, we need this everywhere.
Okay, so by default, every team needs it, basically.
I think so, but the fact that you're asking me this, that is making me wonder, and I haven't figured that out yet, and I think it'll help all teams, but I'm indeed not quite sure that all teams actually need it. But there's quite a few teams that need it that don't have it right now.
And they might not think that they need it, but they still need
exactly,
it.
Exactly, and those are the teams we're focusing on anyway. Yeah, so
yeah. Because, well, for me, it was a little bit like, again, the SOD books at Ball.com, where you had some teams that were running fully their service themselves, and only when something completed they cannot resolve, then they would pull someone from more specialized platform teams, whereas there were other teams who outsourced part of their running, especially during out of office hours, and they would have playbooks and things. So there you had to find the balance, because if your service is not important enough, you don't want to have an overhead of this extra communications, those playbooks that become a sort of API with some other people who working with your application, maintaining your application. And I'm curious whether the similar concepts can be in play with SRE, or you would say that it's not an overhead, it's always only helping.
It does, of course, take effort to get these numbers right, and that's particularly why with the down select is critical, because if you have many numbers, then you can't put enough effort in them to make them right, because once you set them up, you will always find that your initial version will have like false negatives and false positives, and you need to put in the work to iron those out, because there's a good reason, and by ironing those out over the times as you discover them, you get to a better correlation with your user or consumer happiness. It's only if you do that SRE works. Well, if you just set it up for everything and it's, this is a false positive, and you don't follow up on that, then you're gonna get bored with it, and it's just gonna be noise.
If we focus on the teams that do need this, well, where you guys are focusing now, because you cannot spread across everything, I guess.
Yeah.
What would you tell about the motivation? Where does the motivation more come from? The business side of the team, from the developer side? Is there some friction somewhere where it takes some oiling?
The biggest friction we've had is between like teams that talk directly to customers or partners and teams that do not. Basically, it's aligning the performance requirements, the availability requirements over a large microservice landscape. So
like a chains of journeys.
Yes, exactly. So getting that alignment, that's our biggest friction point, and that's also why it's really useful to like have a standardized way of doing that.
This friction, does it come from the teams that are further away from those edges of our microservice system, that they don't see much need in SLIs, SLOs? Or where does this friction come from?
The friction, I think, comes from the fact that there's been so much sandbagging done in the like border applications. All our firefighting happens in the border applications, which means that the border applications have become quite good at that, but also it's a significant amount of the work they do. Well, quite often the cause of the fires they are fighting are further away in the backend, but the teams in the backend are not included as much in this iteration cycle, in this learning cycle that you get from all these fires. And
okay, so they're shielded basically, essentially.
Exactly, and that naturally means that the border teams move faster on this, but that means that you get a gap basically, and I think that gap has naturally occurred, which is why we're now saying let's get it right from the backend out all the way over the user journey.
So I guess you can go detect the critical pieces inside by talking to the border teams and asking where do you see the most problems are coming for you?
Yeah,
And
but
shifting,
of course
or what is your strategy?
it's a the one angle is where are the biggest problems, and the other angle is where's the most value. So you take a combination of those two factors, and that determines what is right now the most important part to have an indicator on.
Yeah, so there might be something inside which is not giving so much trouble yet, but you know that it's important, and
exactly
you want
because
to check that it's in this SRE model.
Yeah, because if you only steer tactically on the problematic instances, then you might lose sight of your most valuable user journeys, and then you can push here and then this goes there, and you don't see it, and suddenly you have the director on your door knocking on your door. It's like, what's going on?
Yes, it's like reminds me that sometimes those services or subsystems that work without a glitch, a problem for years, when they stop to do it becomes usually a much bigger problem than those which always give you some trouble, and everybody knows how to deal with them, how to restart, how to tune. Yes,
Which is why we should probably record an episode on chaos engineering.
A lot of self-induced chaos, yes.
Excellent.
We need to say bye. Yes.
Yes. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. We hope this was interesting, and if you like what we do, leave us a like and subscribe, and boost up the algorithm. Woo!